Hey everyone, I'm back with an Epstein update. Today I'll cover Geoffrey Berman, Gloria Allred, Harvey Weinstein, Jack Lang, and Caroline Lang. I'll also give updates on those I covered in my previous episodes. First up today is Geoffrey Berman, whose connection with Jeffrey Epstein was strictly professional. Berman, as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, or SDNY, led the federal prosecution of Epstein on sex trafficking charges in 2019. In July 2019, Berman's office charged Epstein with sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. Epstein was arrested on July 6, 2019, and the indictment was unsealed shortly after. Berman publicly announced the charges, describing the alleged scheme in which Epstein and associates exploited dozens of underage girls, some as young as 14, in New York and Florida from at least 2002 to 2005. Epstein died by suicide in federal custody on August 10, 2019, and Berman's office continued aspects of the investigation, including charging 2 MCC guards for falsifying records related to Epstein's cell checks. The office also pursued Epstein's co-conspirators and sought cooperation from figures like Prince Andrew, publicly stating Andrew provided zero cooperation. Berman, a Trump appointee who later had a public dispute with the administration over his removal, emphasized the office's independence in high-profile cases, including Epstein's. An important clarification to make here is that the judge assigned to the case was Richard M. Berman, who has no relation to Geoffrey Berman. In short, Geoffrey Berman is best known in this context as the prosecutor who brought fresh federal charges against Epstein after earlier controversies, like Epstein's 2008 Florida plea deal. Let's go further into these charges and the investigation. After Epstein's death, while in federal custody at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, or MCC, in Manhattan, Berman's U.S. Attorney's Office for the SDNY took several key actions. Berman issued a public statement acknowledging the death and emphasizing that the investigation into the sex trafficking conspiracy, a key count in the indictment, remained ongoing. He reiterated commitment to victims, urged others to come forward with information, and noted the conspiracy aspect allowed pursuit of others involved. On August 19, 2019, the office moved for a null prosequi, or dismissal of charges against the deceased Epstein. A hearing was held on August 27th where victims and their counsel could speak. The case was formally dismissed on August 29th, but the broader probe continued. In November 2019, SDNY charged 2 MCC correctional officers, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, with conspiring to defraud the United States and making false records. Video evidence showed they failed to perform required checks on Epstein for about 8 hours while falsifying logs to claim they had. The officers eventually entered deferred prosecution agreements, and charges were later dismissed after compliance. The office continued investigating Epstein's network, focusing on the conspiracy, including interviewing victims and associates. Prosecutors prepared an internal prosecution memorandum around late 2019, analyzing potential charges against associates and employees, for example, evaluating evidence against figures like Ghislaine Maxwell and others for roles in scheduling or facilitating abuse. Public statements highlighted lack of cooperation from certain high-profile individuals, and in early 2020, Berman publicly stated that Prince Andrew had provided zero cooperation with the investigation into co-conspirators. The Epstein casework under Berman laid groundwork for later charges, including against Ghislaine Maxwell, arrested in July 2020 under acting U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss after Berman's departure. Berman left office in 2020 amid a dispute with the Trump administration over his removal. In summary, Berman's office focused on dismissing the case against Epstein while pivoting resources to the conspiracy investigation, holding prison staff accountable for lapses, encouraging victim input, and publicly pressing for cooperation from potential witnesses. Not all potential co-conspirators were charged by SDNY. Maxwell was the primary one ultimately prosecuted federally, but the work contributed to ongoing accountability efforts. These details come from official SDNY statements, court records, and contemporaneous reporting. Next up is Gloria Allred, a high-profile victims' rights attorney who has represented numerous survivors of Epstein's alleged abuse. Allred, often with co-counsel, has representative around 20 to 27 Epstein survivors, some underage at the time of the abuse, others adults. This includes clients like Alicia Arden, who filed a 1997 police report alleging sexual battery by Epstein, and others who pursued claims against Epstein's estate or the settlement program. Allred's firm litigated civil claims against Epstein's estate, assisted victims in connecting with law enforcement, and advocated for transparency in document releases. She has publicly pushed for accountability from potential co-conspirators, like urging Prince Andrew to cooperate with investigators under oath, criticized aspects of file releases that exposed victims' identities, and called for greater support for survivors. Allred stands out as one of the most visible opponents of Epstein in the public eye, frequently appearing in media to support survivors long after his 2019 death. Her work has focused on civil justice, estate claims, and pressing for full accountability and transparency. Let's go further into her work. Allred actively represented dozens of Epstein victims in the Epstein Victims Compensation Program, also called the Settlement or Claims Program, which was established by Epstein's estate executors after his 2019 death. She worked with co-counsel to help clients submit claims while publicly criticizing aspects of the program as insufficient. Her team assisted clients with filing claims before the February 8, 2021 deadline, and they helped prepare detailed submissions, including victim statements, background information, expert input where appropriate, and evidence of harm to maximize outcomes. She emphasized the emotional difficulty for survivors in recounting trauma, and her firm worked closely with clients on every aspect, aiming for the strongest possible presentations within the program's rules. Many of her clients received payouts. For example, some lawsuits against the estate were resolved or dismissed after compensation. While participating, Allred voiced concerns that the fund, which ultimately paid about $121 to $125 million to over 135 victims, was too small relative to the estate's value of hundreds of millions. She argued awards often undervalued the severity of the abuse, especially for those trafficked as minors. She also criticized the lack of transparency, no appeal process, no written reasons or findings of fact for awards, which left some victims uncertain about the basis for their compensation. The independent program, administered by Jordana Feldman under Ken Feinberg's framework, offered a faster alternative to prolonged litigation. It required detailed claims but provided confidentiality and relatively quick resolutions. Allred welcomed the idea of compensation in principle, but pushed for it to be fair, meaningful, and respectful. Some of her clients also pursued or kept open separate civil lawsuits against the estate. In summary, Allred handled the program by zealously advocating for her clients' maximum compensation through submissions and support, while publicly highlighting its shortcomings and continuing broader fights for transparency and accountability. This mirrors her long-standing approach in high-profile victims' right cases. On to Harvey Weinstein, who was acquainted with Jeffrey Epstein as the two moved in overlapping elite social and professional circles in New York and Hollywood. However, their relationship was not especially close or long-lasting. They were part of a group of investors who bid unsuccessfully to buy New York Magazine in 2003, and Epstein and Weinstein socialized in the same Hamptons and Manhattan scenes, with one report noting they had a favorite outdoor table at a Hamptons restaurant. Epstein's records include handwritten phone messages from Weinstein, and phone records linked to Weinstein's company also appear in Epstein-related materials from the mid-2000s. Epstein reportedly used his connection to Weinstein to impress aspiring actresses, and in one case, Epstein introduced a victim to Weinstein, which led to an audition for a Weinstein-produced film. Unsealed Epstein documents and FBI tips mention Weinstein in contexts such as allegations that Epstein directed or introduced women to him for massages or other encounters, and one woman identified Weinstein from a photo in this context. However, these are unproven claims from tips or victim statements, and Weinstein was never charged or investigated in connection with Epstein's sex trafficking activities. Let's go further into their social and professional overlaps. These overlaps occurred in elite New York, Hamptons, and Hollywood circles during the early to mid-2000s, primarily as ambitious, high-status networkers in media, finance, and entertainment. Their acquaintance was transactional and status-oriented rather than a deep personal friendship, and it reportedly soured over time. In 2003, Epstein and Weinstein were part of the same investor group, led by Mort Zuckerman, with Michael Wolff, Donnie Deutsch, and Nelson Peltz, that bid about $44 million to buy New York Magazine. The bid failed, but this placed them in direct business discussions with overlapping media and finance elites. The two reportedly had a favorite outdoor table at a Hamptons restaurant, with the restaurant owner later symbolically burning the table after both men's scandals. They socialized in the same summer elite circles, and Epstein's 2005 Palm Beach message pads, seized by police, include calls from Weinstein. A March 1, 2005 note records a call from Mr. Harvey Weinstein, and Weinstein's company, Miramax, also appears in Epstein-related records. They moved in overlapping networks involving figures like Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew, and New York and Hollywood power players, and a notable photo shows them together at a 2005 costume party hosted by Prince Andrew for his daughter Beatrice's 18th birthday at Windsor Castle. Epstein allegedly leveraged his connection with Weinstein to impress aspiring actresses and models, introducing at least one victim to Weinstein, which led to an audition for the 2005 Miramax film Feast. Reports indicate the relationship cooled or ended when Epstein distanced himself after Weinstein allegedly tried to assault one of Epstein's favorite girls, possibly in Paris. Epstein reportedly called Weinstein an animal and ended or reduced contact. In recent years, including a 2026 prison interview, Weinstein has downplayed the ties, claiming he only ran into Epstein once or twice and that they were not friends. Records and contemporaneous accounts suggest a more substantial acquaintance than he now admits. Both operated in environments of wealth, power, and impunity that enabled exploitation. Epstein in finance and trafficking, Weinstein in Hollywood casting couch dynamics. They shared enablers, publicists like Peggy Siegel, and access to young women, though no evidence shows joint criminal activity. Moving on to Jack Lang, the former French culture and education minister under President François Mitterrand. Jack had a documented personal and social relationship with Jeffrey Epstein from around 2012 until Epstein's 2019 death, and his name appears over 600 times, some reports say nearly 700, in the recently released Epstein Files. They maintained intermittent correspondence over roughly 7 years, including emails about lunches, theater outings, art exhibits, film premieres, and a proposed trip to Marrakesh. Photos and videos show them together, including one outside the Louvre Pyramid in Paris in March 2019. Epstein introduced or connected Lang through figures like Woody Allen. They dined at chic restaurants and attended cultural events. Jack's daughter, Caroline Lang, also appears extensively in the files with her own correspondence, and the family had broader ties, including alleged financial links. Jack and his family reportedly requested and received favors, such as the use of Epstein's car, private plane, or other support. An offshore company based in the U.S. Virgin Islands, linked to Epstein, reportedly involved Lang family members, with Caroline owning shares. This has triggered French financial investigations. Jack has denied knowledge of Epstein's crimes at the time and described their relationship as focused on art, culture, and cinema. He claimed he was shocked by the revelations in 2019, and following the January 30, 2026 release of the Epstein Files by the U.S. DOJ, Jack resigned as president of the Arab World Institute in Paris. French authorities opened a preliminary investigation into Jack and Caroline for suspected tax fraud and related financial issues, and police raided the Arab World Institute and other locations. Neither have been implicated in Epstein's sex trafficking or abuse of minors, with the scrutiny centered on their personal and financial association with him post-2008 conviction. Since I've already mentioned her, I may as well make our last for today be Caroline Lang. Caroline had a significant personal, social, and financial relationship with Jeffrey Epstein from around 2012 until his 2019 arrest, and she was more directly involved in business dealings than her father. Caroline was born around 1962 and is a former actress turned film producer and media executive with experience at Warner Brothers France and other roles. She was introduced to Epstein around 2012 through filmmaker Woody Allen and his wife. She appears frequently in the Epstein Files alongside her father's hundreds of mentions, with extensive email correspondence covering lunches, cultural events, art, and business proposals. In 2016, Epstein and Caroline co-founded Prytany LLC, an offshore company registered in the U.S. Virgin Islands, a tax haven. She held 50% of the shares. The stated purpose was to invest in and acquire works by emerging French and international artists, such as paintings and sculptures. The company reportedly held around $1.4 million in accounts, and Epstein's lawyers handled much of the setup. Caroline claimed she contributed art expertise rather than capital and received no personal benefits. She said she resigned from the company in 2019 after Epstein's arrest. Caroline was named as a beneficiary for $5 million in a will Epstein signed 2 days before his death, though she has stated she was unaware of this and received nothing. She often acted as a bridge between Epstein and her father, organizing meetings and facilitating discussions, including proposals like a Lang Art Fund or Jack Project. She was listed in Epstein's Black Book with contact details, and following the late January 2026 U.S. DOJ release of the Epstein Files, Caroline resigned as head delegate of France's Independent Production Union. French financial prosecutors opened a preliminary investigation into her and her father for suspected laundering of aggravated tax fraud proceeds related to the undisclosed offshore ties. Raids occurred, including at the Arab World Institute. Caroline has described herself as incredibly naive, portrayed Epstein as a generous sponsor and acquaintance interested in supporting artists, and denied knowledge of his crimes or any personal financial gain. It has not been independently confirmed that Caroline received the $5 million bequest from Epstein's will, but she has repeatedly and publicly stated that she never received any funds and was unaware of the bequest until journalists informed her. Epstein's estate, valued at hundreds of millions originally, with about $127 million remaining as of a 2025 filing, has been settling victim claims and other distributions through a compensation program and ongoing probate and trust processes. Many named beneficiaries in the will did not ultimately receive payouts, especially after massive victim settlements took priority. No public reporting or court records as of mid-2026 indicate that Lang actually received her named bequest, and her statements have been echoed without contradiction in coverage by major outlets. French financial prosecutors are investigating her and her father over the offshore Prytaney LLC company and potential tax issues, but the probe focuses on undisclosed financial ties, not on receipt of will funds. The French investigation into Caroline Lang and Jack is a preliminary financial probe opened in early February 2026 by the National Financial Prosecutor's Office. It remains active, centered on suspected financial irregularities rather than any involvement in Epstein's sex crimes. Prosecutors are examining whether the undisclosed offshore structure and related activities involved tax evasion, failure to report assets, or related money laundering. On February 16, 2026, French police conducted searches, including at the Arab World Institute, where Jack had been president, and other locations. Caroline's lawyer and the family deny any wrongdoing or receipt of improper benefits, and no public evidence has linked her or her father to Epstein's sex trafficking activities. Since this is still a preliminary investigation, meaning it is in an evidence-gathering phase, it could be closed, lead to charges, or be upgraded to a formal judicial investigation. Paris prosecutors have also opened separate Epstein-related probes, one on human trafficking and one on financial offenses, but the Lang case is primarily under the financial prosecutors. I found it strange and noteworthy that Jeffrey Epstein signed a new will and created a trust just 2 days before his death, so let's dig into that a bit further. Epstein signed the new last will and testament while in custody at MCC in Manhattan. The same day, he created the 1953 trust, named after his birth year, and directed that his entire estate, valued at roughly $577 to $600 million, be poured into it. The will revoked all prior wills and was witnessed by 2 attorneys, including one who had represented El Chapo. It named longtime associates, Darren Indike and Richard Kahn, as executors, and Boris Nikolic, a former Bill Gates science advisor, as an alternate. Beneficiaries were not named in the public will itself, but in the associated trust documents. Later releases showed dozens of individuals, including employees, associates, and Caroline Lang, with a $5 million bequest, though victim claims took priority and many payouts were limited or delayed. Executing a comprehensive new will and trust while awaiting trial on serious federal sex trafficking charges, shortly after being taken off suicide watch, raises eyebrows. Court filings and contemporaneous reporting noted the unusual proximity to his death. Moving assets into a trust can make it harder for creditors and victims to access funds quickly, potentially shielding distributions. This fueled speculation that Epstein was getting his ducks in a row in anticipation of death by suicide or otherwise. Epstein had been on suicide watch earlier, faced harsh jail conditions per his own notes, and met with lawyers on August 8th. The Department of Justice Office of the Inspector General report documented the will signing during a lawyer meeting, but found no evidence it related to foul play in his death. Updating or creating a will shortly before death is not inherently illegal and happens relatively often, like in terminal illness or after major life events. Wills can be changed at any time while the person has testamentary capacity. However, last-minute changes often invite challenges on grounds of lack of capacity, undue influence, or duress. In Epstein's case, the will was held up for estate administration purposes, though it has been litigated extensively due to victim claims. No successful challenge has invalidated it on timing or capacity grounds. Now it's time to do a quick update on new information that has come out since my previous episodes, but first, let me tell you about my sponsors quick. Sometimes I get on a roll cleaning or gardening, and I need a boost but don't have time for a meal. Big Fork Brand's pork jerky is the perfect choice to keep my momentum, offering high-protein snacks for on-the-go energy boosts. Not only do they offer pork jerky, but they also make pork sticks, bacon sausage, bacon hot dogs, and burger and hot dog sauces. Products come in a variety of delicious flavors, including Thai green curry and maple and brown sugar for the meat options, and gangster and Chicago fire for the sauces. I personally think the original flavor of the pork jerky hits just right after tackling a big chore. It's a little salty and very flavorful. My discount code gives you 20% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit bigforkbrands.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's J-A-D-E, at checkout. Are you looking for a gift for a music lover, or maybe some apparel to show off your quirky side? Old Glory has you covered. With over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture, you're guaranteed to find the perfect item. They even have seasonal gear. My husband enjoys the Beatles and Led Zeppelin apparel, and I love the Billy Idol apparel. I even found items for my fellow plant enthusiasts. This family-owned superstore is known for their quality and customer service, offers free standard shipping on all orders, and orders are shipped the same day you purchase. My discount code gives you 15% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit oldglory.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's J-A-D-E, at checkout. Looking for a game-changing way to improve your health? Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant, packed with over 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, and antioxidants. Harnessing the best nature has to offer, Zevo Life nourishes your body while driving your performance, vitality, and overall well-being. Each serving is a concentrated source of clean, well-balanced nutrition designed to support modern lifestyles, and just 1 teaspoon a day supports your gut, boosts energy, and promotes healthier skin and hair. It's no wonder that it's receiving rave 5-star reviews. Step into a healthier future with a 30% discount and a 30-day risk-free guarantee by visiting zivo.life and using my promo code. To support my show and to receive 30% off your entire order, enter in my promo code JADE, that's J-A-D-E, at checkout. All right, let's dive into the updates. On May 6th, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick appeared voluntarily to address his relationship with Epstein in a closed-door transcribed interview before the House Oversight Committee. The transcripts were released publicly by the committee on May 13th and 14th, and some contradictions were highlighted. Lutnick previously stated in a 2025 podcast that he and his wife cut all ties with Epstein after a single disturbing 2005 meeting at Epstein's New York City home, saying they left abruptly after Epstein showed a massage table and made remarks about massages. However, DOJ files released earlier in 2026 showed continued contact, including emails and interactions post-2008 conviction, a 2011 visit to Epstein's home during which they discussed scaffolding, and a 2012 family lunch with Lutnick's wife, children, and nannies on Epstein's private island, Little St. James. Emails from Epstein's assistant and Lutnick's wife referenced plans for the visit. Both invested in the same now defunct company, Adfin, digital advertising tech, around 2012 to 2013, and at least one photo from the island visit with Lutnick in a blue shirt was released earlier and briefly removed, then restored from DOJ files. In testimony, Lutnick described the interactions as limited, 3 in-person meetings over years, inconsequential, and with virtually non-existent personal or professional relationship. He denied flying on Epstein's plane, deeper involvement, or knowledge of crimes, and he attributed inconsistencies to not recalling details precisely. Democrats on the committee and some lawmakers have called for his resignation, citing alleged misrepresentations, but no victim allegations of sexual misconduct or participation in Epstein's trafficking have surfaced against Lutnick. He remains in his position, and the broader Epstein hearings and reviews continue. On May 12th, there was a House Oversight Committee Democrats field hearing in West Palm Beach, Florida. Survivors testified about Epstein's abuses, including cases that continued after his 2008 plea deal. They criticized the Sweetheart Non-Prosecution Agreement negotiated by then U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, which allowed Epstein to plead guilty to state charges, solicitation of prostitution, including from a minor, serve about 13 months with work release, and receive immunity for himself and potential co-conspirators from federal charges. Democratic staff released the report titled The Price of Non-Prosecution, which argues that Acosta's 2006 to 2008 deal enabled Epstein to expand his trafficking network internationally rather than stopping it. It highlights victim impacts, lack of proper notification and consultation, and how the lenient outcome allegedly allowed further abuse. These build on larger DOJ releases of millions of Epstein-related pages, videos, and images in January 2026 under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which included more details on the 2006 to 2008 Florida investigation, a draft federal indictment Acosta's office did not pursue, and criticisms of the non-prosecution agreement. Earlier 2025 congressional testimony and transcripts from Acosta were also referenced. Acosta's role as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida in negotiating the 2008 plea deal has been public for years. The DOJ's Office of Professional Responsibility in 2020 called it poor judgment, but not professional misconduct. Recent files and hearings have re-emphasized this without fundamentally new evidence of additional wrongdoing by him personally. A federal judge ordered the unsealing of Epstein's purported suicide note, which he allegedly wrote in a Manhattan jail. According to multiple forensic handwriting experts, the recently unsealed purported suicide note from July 2019 matches the handwriting of another note found in Epstein's cell after his death in August 2019. The July 2019 note was recently unsealed after a New York Times request. Epstein's former cellmate, Nicholas Tartaglione, claimed he found it in a graphic novel after Epstein's first incident, found with a bedsheet around his neck. It includes phrases like, "They investigated me for a month, found nothing. It is a treat to be able to choose one's time to say goodbye. What you want me to do, bust out crying? No fun, not worth it." With no fun underlined. The post-death note, previously released, was found in Epstein's cell after his hanging. It complained about jail conditions like bugs, burnt food, etc., and also used the underlined phrase, "no fun," plus a similar exclamation-heavy style. Forensic document examiners, including those consulted by the AP, reviewed both notes and concluded they share common authorship based on similar letter shapes, spacing, capital letter usage, and punctuation style, and matching unique traits like F formations, S shapes, slant, and how "no fun" is written. Experts described the match as strong, all but certainly the same person, with elements that would be difficult to convincingly fake. One examiner, Bart Baguette, stated certainty of the same writer. However, they could not definitively confirm it as Epstein's due to limited publicly available confirmed handwriting samples from him for full comparison. Tartaglione's own handwriting was compared and largely ruled out due to significant dissimilarities. Phrases in the note like "no fun" and "bust out crying," referencing little rascals, echo Epstein's prior emails and writings to friends and family. Mark Epstein, Geoffrey's brother who doubts the suicide ruling, calls it a forgery. He argues a skilled forger could mimic the style and lift phrases from public Epstein emails and files, and that a real suicide note would be more personal or addressed to someone. Some online comparisons dispute the match, citing limited samples, and official authentication has been limited. The DOJ has noted it's the first they've seen of this specific note in some contexts, and full forensic tying to Epstein remains incomplete. In summary, the two jail notes align with each other per experts, and stylistic phrase matches support Epstein as the author, though absolute proof is limited by sample availability, and skepticism, including from his brother, persists amid broader questions about his death. No major evidence has emerged to prove forgery. The rest of these updates are much shorter, so I'll fire them off real quick. Bill Gates is scheduled for a transcribed interview before the House Oversight Committee on June 10th. A federal judge granted preliminary approval to a $72 to $105 million settlement in a class action lawsuit David Boyce helped lead. This addresses claims that the bank facilitated Epstein's activities by ignoring suspicious transactions. Boyce stated that 60 to 75 victims were expected to claim funds, with a final approval hearing set for August 27th. The claim deadline is in mid-June. About 20 women, including about 10 recently, have come forward as suspected victims in France's broader Epstein probe, with some related to Jean-Luc Brunel's alleged actions. Investigators continue to gather testimony with links and other figures, like former model agency associates. That's all for now. Future episodes will cover Kathleen Rumler, Julian Assange, Joe Biden, Mark Bestreiser, Jared Kushner, Jay Lefkowitz, Miriam Adelson, Lana Bolovic, Jill Biden, Tony Blair, John Bolton, Bono, Richard Branson, Patrick Byrne, Tucker Carlson, Jay Clayton, Lord Robert May, Nancy Mace, James Margolin, and Thomas Massey. Of course, just because I've listed these people does not mean I'm accusing them of wrongdoing. If I've left a name off of this list that you think should be covered, please let me know in the comments wherever you follow me. Have a great day.